Hey guys, before we get started, I just wanted to give a big shout out to our new members, Ayler20A6 and Susan8787. Members are a vital part of what makes this show possible, and they get access to awesome perks like the bonus podcast. To become a member yourself, go to humanechoes.com and click the Become a Member button. Boom, 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 boom. Bomb, bomb, bomb. Podcast 201. That's going in there, Tony. That's going in the intro.
I'll do your spiel. We can just start here.
Hello and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast, the show where we review oddball movies, have oddball discussions, and sing oddball songs in the beginning.
Always. It's kind of hard to actually stop Albert from singing certain songs as we get these things started. I'm Tony Southcott.
I am Albert Berg, and I want to give a shout out, by the way. We like to shout out the people who are tweeting about the show, and last week we mentioned John Jones on the episode 200 talking about Pippi on the Run, and he was tweeting it out. Thank you, John, for spreading the love, and others of you as well.
Thank you guys to the new horde of Dwarf Fortress people that found us again this week. If you guys found your way to the podcast, thank you for making that video very successful.
Yeah, well, YouTube made that video successful, Tony.
That's
it turns
true.
out, finally, we decided not to name something weird, and we just went with the boring option. And SEO loves boring options.
Yeah,
so
it
Dwarf
loves
Fortress
parsing it. It's just
Adventure
like, oh,
mode.
that's sweet, sweet text.
We are in the second search result for the words Dwarf Fortress Adventure Mode right now, and it's doing good for us. People are liking it. That's very exciting. It's sort of inside baseball, not so much to do with the podcast, but
Yeah, but I figure some of them might come over here. So if you guys are from Dwarf Fortress listening to the podcast, you're the real heroes. Hope you have a good week. But we are here to talk about a movie we've avoided for
not avoided so much.
30-some years.
I've seen this movie before, Tony. You have not. You're the one who hasn't seen Jaws. I have seen Jaws. I'm the one who hasn't seen The Godfather, okay?
And you call yourself a film critic.
Not usually I don't. Sometimes I call myself a podcaster. I don't go around being like, I'm a film critic as I'm checking out at Walmart. People ask me what I do. I just sort of like say like, I can work from home. On the internet stuff, because I really don't want to have to go into detail.
And they're like, so you're on welfare.
No, they don't. They're all they never ask either. That's the best part. They're never like, what do you do on the internet? They're just sort of, on the internet, I'm working from home. That sounds good. And they just like nod blankly.
See, and like whenever I get asked that question, I'm like, oh yeah, I work from home. I have like this internet business. And they're like, oh, what are you selling? I'm like, I'm sort of selling t-shirts and podcasts and all sorts of other things. And then it just turns into this cascade of questions about how they can work from home. It's never about like, hey, what's your podcast about? It's like, how do I get to quit my job?
Well, first of all, you avoid talking about Jaws for 200 issues of your podcast. And
yeah, whenever you have 13 other shark movies on.
Do we have 13, Tony?
It's right around there.
This is the true irony of the fact that we haven't talked about Jaws yet, is that I love schlock shark movies, okay? Like, I know that Jaws is the original, and then, like, everybody took this and didn't understand what it was doing and just thought that sharks were cool and threw sharks everywhere in their movies in any circumstance they could find and made them bigger and more ridiculous. And I love that.
Sharks are pretty cool.
They are. They're very cool. But this is not that kind of movie, Tony. It's very weird watching this, knowing the things it spawned, knowing how many people have riffed on these ideas. The whole, like, we need to close the beach, and the mayor being like, this is tourist season. We can't close the beach.
Yeah, it's adding like the douchebag corporate guy. It's just keeping in line with so many tropes that are out there now.
And it created those tropes, but it's still hard to watch, especially the first half of this movie, and not be thinking about the other movies that came out of this. This movie feels like two movies really to me. There's the first half and the second half.
Yeah, once they get on the boat, it's an entirely different movie.
And I really, really enjoyed the parts on the boat. The parts on the shore I thought were good. I mean, I'm not going to, like, I can't come out here and be like, no, this is terrible. But it didn't grab me. There's a lot of stuff that's very chaotic, and it's to a purpose, right? It's showing this guy's life in this small town and how he's trying to settle down, trying to find a quiet place for his family, a place where he can make a difference. And yet he's still drowned out by everything that's going on in his life. But it just the chaos felt a little bit overwhelming at times. There's times when people are talking and other people are talking over them, and I understand that to the purpose of that, but it also, I don't know, like there's something weird about the way the sound is mixed in this. Maybe it's just
movies from the 70s. Like there's always a little bit of a weird like look / delay / whatever. I don't know if it's like 100% timed correctly. It's weird.
I don't think it's a delay.
I see that in a lot of older movies. It's not a delay. It's just things that aren't quite right.
One of the things that I never thought about before until just recently, I was taking a lynda.com class about audio processing for movies, and the guy mentioned that back in the day, you had to account for the fact that your microphone was going to be hooked up to a physical tape player and not turn up your sound loud enough to pick up the tape sound as it recorded your sound. And so I imagine that has some of it, and just technology improves as well. But it is a movie really about how this guy comes to this small town and is looking for a way to make a difference, and yet he's really confronted by the fact that life isn't going to let him.
You're thinking about Roy Schneider, correct? Or Scheiter?
Yes. So the character Brody is, and he talks about this. He talks about the wanting to make a difference, and yet the movie constantly puts him as the outsider. When he's on the island, everybody's talking about like, oh, you're not an islander. You're not be an islander unless you're born here. And he's there trying to protect these people. He's working with them, but he's not with them. He's not part of them. And that continues on even until he's on the boat, right? When him and Quentin Hooper are on the boat, Quentin Hooper, like, are old sea dogs. They are at each other's throat, but they've been in this type of situation before. And Brody's completely out of his element there. So he's the one who's sitting there on the boat having to take Dramamine and just kind of avoiding a lot of the work because he doesn't know what he's doing. Right. And he's sitting there. He's in that position where he's sitting back, listening to their conversations, listening to them talk, listening to them, spin out their different stories and talking about their scars and tattoos and stuff. And he doesn't have anything to contribute to that. And that really, I think, is maybe at the heart of what makes him such a compelling character, because he's always on the outside, always trying to find a place to fit in, and never really doing it until, I guess, at the very end. His triumph feels like more than just, I killed the shark, but it feels like there's a payoff there emotionally for him. It was kind of strange seeing Hooper all of a sudden be really good at that sort of stuff, because you see him as like the rich, nerdy guy that's probably not a really good hand for a ship, but like Quint hands him the rope. He's just talking about like, oh, do this sort of knot, and they just kind of bond over that, and I really liked that sort of aspect of the relationship. There was a lot more of Quint in this movie than I remember, like especially in that second half. Because I've seen parts and pieces of this movie. Like, I knew exactly how it ended because I've seen how all the special effects were made. And everybody kept talking about how Quint is this character that's so awesome that they built up, and then just, like, out of nowhere they kill him. Like, there's nothing going on there. And it's like, they kind of hint at it a couple times. Like, it didn't feel that abrupt to me. And it's weird looking back at that in retrospect. He has one of those sort of stereotypical kind of action hero entrances with the fingernails on the chalkboard. He's obviously, ain't afraid of nobody. He's not taking any guff. He's the captain of that ship. And so there is that sort of punch of seeing him die, but nobody on this boat, there's the iconic line, you're going to need a bigger boat. And it's been said so many times, been parodied and riffed on so many times in other movies now. And yet when you see it in this movie, it doesn't feel like something to laugh at or quote. At least to me, it feels like that boat's freaking small. Yeah. Like, they're not on a big boat. They actually are going to need a bigger boat because the shark is a big shark. And the smallness of that boat, that adds to the terror there. They're not on some cruise ship. It's not some big fishing trawler. It's this beat up, like, falling apart boat. I I hesitate. I wonder if I would have gotten on that boat. I would have hired maybe somebody with actually a bigger boat if I was Brody.
Yeah, especially if you're willing to put up the 10 grand anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I know that Quint has that, you know, he has the skill, and there's that maybe my favorite scene in the movie when he sees the he sees the reel start to click out, click 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 click, and he like really quietly straps himself in because he knows that he's hooked the shark, and the way that Spielberg builds up the tension in that scene and sort of shows him like being as quiet as possible as he's strapping all that stuff on and realizing what it means for him to be like needing to strap himself into something because this fish is that big was really well done.
It's also like the moment where he has to back up all this talk, where he has to like show that he is the badass guy. He's not just boasting and trying to get these people's money. Like it's time to do the work.
And I do like him and Hooper have this very combative relationship, right? They're very Hooper and him have different points of view. Quint sees Hooper as a sissy boy, even though Hooper can back up some of his stuff. And it's neat to see that neither one of them is wrong all the time. Hooper says to Quint, "Oh, that's not the shark," when he first catches it, but it is. And later on, when Hooper's telling Quint, "Hey, slow down, you're going to blow up the boat," and then Quint does, because Quint isn't right all the time either.
Yeah.
It's nice to have these guys be these really deep and fleshed out, flawed characters.
And that, like, with the limited time that they had, they did a very good job of that. I was thinking about it last night, where it's like, I've seen a lot of movies where they let you have like surface tension between people, but they're not really bringing a look inside their heads. And I felt like you actually got to know Hooper pretty well in this.
Did you jump during the diving scene when
Yes,
the head comes out? My wife jumped and I jumped, and I'd seen it before, but I forgot how creepy that moment was. There's not a lot of scares in this movie, but there is a lot of tension, and that's one of those times where they pay it off.
Yeah, that I hadn't seen that particular scene before. Like I said, I've seen a lot of pieces of this, but never quite that one. And I was just sitting there, and I was kind of laying back, I was relaxed and watching this, and then all of a sudden I was just like brought straight out of that, just jumping out of my seat a little bit. It was really well done. You also don't expect Spielberg to do many jump scares, so it was a very good one.
I liked also, well, again, this is at the beginning part of the movie where there's not as much that I loved. Particularly the mayor is so kind of over the top and slimy. I mean, you can make an argument for him as, you know, that he doesn't know, that he's never seen a shark attack like this before. And, you know, that they actually do. We see a lot of people come in, and you understand that this is a real big deal for the town to have these people here. But the way Murray Hamilton plays him is just so like oozing of politician slime. He even like calls all his buddies up there on, you know, and they drive the car onto the ferry just so they can all gang up on Brody and be like, Brody, listen, let's not close the beach. And then immediately tells the guy to turn back around. Like he didn't need to drive his car onto there. You hear that's the one great moment is you hear him just tell him like, yeah, all right, take us back, because that's all he was there for. He was just there to intimidate him. He wanted to get him alone. And the other impressive thing, I saw this in Every Frame of Painting. I'm going to totally rip off what he said, and you guys should go watch the video where he talks about this shot in Jaws. But that's a oneer, and it's a oneer that you don't really notice because the way Spielberg sets it up, he's not following somebody through some big giant action scene. Steven Spielberg will do these longer takes, you know, either a minute and a half to 2 minutes, and he'll frame them in such a way that you have what in other movies would essentially be 4 or 5 shots, but he composes the shots in such a way that they are all knit together. So you'll have people move around in the frame, so you have certain people in the foreground and certain people in the background, and it's one continuous shot, but Spielberg is setting it up in such a way that you see, and you know for sure that this is, I mean, it's not a green screen. Those guys are actually on that boat. So from a technical standpoint, knowing that they had to stand there on that boat and get that shot in one take, and if they didn't get it, you have to drive the boat all the way back. It was really cool.
It's a really good technical feat, especially because whenever you've got that many lines going on and you're on a boat and everything, there's so much that could just slightly distract an actor. I wonder how many takes it actually took.
Actors are pretty good at nailing their lines. So you usually want to get multiple takes anyway, just for coverage, just in case something goes wrong or you don't have
All the
what
times
you
the
need.
audio screws up and all that.
Right. But there's so many little things in this movie that just take it to an extra level. Like when they find the arm on the beach, after the initial shark attack of the woman in the water, and it's not. I mean, it's just a prosthetic arm, right? It's or either that or it's somebody kind of buried under the sand and holding their arm up. But it's something that you've seen in a lot of movies before. It's not necessarily anything shocking, but those crabs gathered around that arm just take it up to another level. Like, they just puts that, you understand the revulsion, and they show you the revulsion first and then show you that arm, and it pays off because just that little detail of having those things around there eating that flesh makes it more repulsive.
Yeah, it's like just you know that they found, well, it probably wouldn't be that engorged because all the main organs were missing, but just like this bloated, gross corpse. And then seeing they didn't have to show you the corpse because they showed you the crabs and the fingers. Yeah,
there's a lot of stuff they don't show you in this movie. You don't see, when he does the postmortem, when Hooper comes and does the postmortem, it's just on his face and you get everything you need, which is another great moment for his character where he's not like some kind of action hero. He's not invincible. He's really grossed out by this body that had been eaten by a shark and, is waiting for an opportunity to look away. He just really wants to get this over with and be done doing this.
Like, he just wants to know how big the shark is. He's not looking for anything else. He's just like, probably Vicks under the nose type. Yeah.
The shark in this movie, the interesting thing is people talk about how it didn't work. And really, when it's on screen, it still doesn't look that good. Like, if you just had to depend on this shark for your attention, if you just showed people the moments where it's just like kind of up on the deck and the mouth like flopping open a little bit, it looks a little bit silly, but it works because of the buildup. It works because of everything we've seen it do so before.
And the thing is, like, whenever it's underwater, it looks just fine.
It does. And some of the best moments with the shark are when you can't see the shark, but you can see what it's doing. When the barrels are around and you see the barrels like moving around in the in the ocean, and you understand when Quint says, "Oh well, he can't go down now that he has 3 barrels on him. 3 barrels is too many." And then you see the barrels go down. You're like, "Oh crap! It is for real. This thing is massive."
Reminds me of a screenshot I took last night because the very first closed caption of this movie summed it up absolutely perfectly. It was just like menacing music rises.
Bum, 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 bum. You watched it with closed captioning on?
The closed captioning was just on. I didn't even know it until I saw that, but like that was the only closed captioning there was. I actually do watch a fair amount of movies with closed caption, especially when people mumble or the sound's not quite right, because I'd rather not blast my neighbors by turning it up to the point where I can hear it.
Right. I thought that they did a lot of things really well. However, I don't love this movie like a lot of people love this movie. I liked it. I thought it was good, and I mean, I would never sit here and just bash it, but this is not, I didn't watch this and be like, I was totally and completely terrified through the whole thing. They did a good job. I liked a lot of the tension, and especially towards the end, the sequence in the shark cage is really intense, but as a movie as a whole, I'm just kind of, I thought of, I watched it a while back and I was like, this is okay. And I watched it this time and I thought, this is okay. I hate to be a bummer if somebody was expecting me to think this is the greatest thing ever.
No, I think everybody expected you to absolutely despise this movie.
Oh, why?
That's just what I've been told by several people that listen to the show, that they expected you to just rag on this movie and hate it.
Oh, no, I'm not gonna do that. I mean, it's not a bad movie. I can't say anything. Again, I felt like
you also respect what it did for cinema as well, so.
Well, right. I wouldn't have my cheesy bad shark movies if it wasn't for this. You can see those echoes. You can see the things that they're riffing off of and doing worse. The thing is, I don't know why nobody ever copies the thing as well. Why is the copy always inferior or usually inferior?
A copy of a copy of a copy. You just lose the resolution.
Maybe. It seems like there's a lot of stuff here that you could still do that it would still work in a shark movie, and I mean, like the small boat, right? The small cast, taking that, narrowing the focus down, and having that.
Well, The Shallows was pretty narrow, wasn't it?
Yes, it was, and The Shallows was fine up until like the very end, and it kind of got. It starts out like Jaws and turns into one of the other shark movies at the very end.
No spoilers beyond that.
Yes, I don't want to be specific, but I felt like The Shallows is not as good as Jaws, but it's good. There's just so few good shark movies. I mean, it's weird that I haven't seen Jaws 2, and I've know by reputation the third one is just considered garbage. But these are legitimately terrifying and menacing beasts. And the fact that, first of all, this kind of, like, people didn't know about sharks before this. I mean, people knew about sharks. People understood that there were sharks out there. But I think Jaws is a significant reason why people have a phobia of sharks.
Yeah. I was talking to my dad about this movie this weekend because he was saying when he saw it, he was just a kid. He was like, I think 10 years old, something like that. And he swore on everything that he would never set foot in the ocean because of this movie. And I've heard that from a lot of people who saw this while they were growing up, like that it was just hugely socially significant.
Yeah, and it's not fair, really, because, sharks don't do this. Even the people in the movie are like, this shark's messed up.
Yeah.
They don't just hang out and eat people over and over and over again. They get, I mean, they do eat stuff and they are eating machines, but they generally don't prefer human people. But there are, I mean, the movie does a great job of showing that tension. Even in the beachgoers, talking about the slimy mayor, when he goes to it's like the head of the, town council or whatever, and says, hey, nobody's in the water. You should go play in the water. And the guy knows that there's a shark out there, but lets the peer pressure put him and his family into the water. And then everybody else sees that and they're like, oh, well, it's fine. And then the follow-up to that, when the shark attacks, or I'm sorry, it's the fake-out shark attack, but still, the terror of everybody trying to get out of the water and just trampling over each other, and the kids being pushed down into the surf, and I think there's a guy who's pushed down in the surf as well.
Yeah, the guy that's pushing those kids down is just flopping their their floating stuff over and getting on it and getting away.
Yeah, I don't think they show anybody actually dying from that. At least it doesn't occur in the movie, but there's still genuine fear, almost more so than just being attacked by the shark. The idea of everybody just scrambling over each other and losing your balance in that situation, just being trampled under the surf. And the sequence where the little boy gets attacked it just feels. You understand because you see the mom there and her looking out and saying, calling her kid's name. They know how to really give every death an impact. I mean, there's so many.
It's not even that big of a body count movie for a shark movie, at least by modern standards as well.
No, it's not. And so many shark movies have done the person in the water gets jerked under the water, see the blood flow out. It's a simple thing to do, but so few of them make you understand that people care about the fact that there's somebody who died. Doing this to a kid obviously really is one easy way to make that happen. There's no infant immortality in this movie.
Yeah. What else do we have to say about Jaws?
I don't know. I think. I mean, this is a movie that I think you could probably spend a long time analyzing. Spielberg, whatever you want to say about this movie in particular, is very good about choosing his shots, about, again, putting those little details in there that, again, at the very beginning, when Brody picks up the phone, he doesn't know which phone to pick up. There's that one shot where there's the phone in the foreground, and you see him pick up that phone, and it's not the phone that's ringing. And it just gives you the understanding that this is a new place for him, and also puts you as the audience in his shoes, because that phone's the one in frame. We hear a phone that's ringing. We assume, as he does, that that's the phone he's going to pick up, and he picks it up and it's the wrong phone. And so that very little moment very early on just kind of sets us in his perspective and says, hey, this is a guy who is in a new place. He's in a new location. He doesn't have all the ins and outs figured out yet. And we're right there with him. And just tiny things like that just put the movie forward more than a lot of other movies. You just have to know to think about that stuff and to put those little flourishes in there. And, you know, Spielberg is a thoughtful filmmaker. He really has purpose behind everything, behind every camera movement, behind every bit of framing. And he knows what he's doing. What he does may not end up being something that everybody likes, but he is always to a purpose, always very specific with where he's going and what he's doing. And you can definitely see that in this movie. I know it's a weird thing to go out on talking about a shot of a phone, but it just does show you, you know, how much he cares. And there's probably 100 little things like that if you watch this movie, you'd find them. But again, while this movie was fine and I liked it, it's not something that I feel like, man, I really got to go back and watch this again. I loved it so much. It was just okay for me as far as like an emotional reaction to it, which is a weird place to be because it's as a film reviewer, sometimes I always said that I don't call myself that, but
as someone who is occasionally paid to review films,
you're in that position of intellectually appreciating something, but not in your gut necessarily loving it. And you have to be able to be honest about that and say, well, you know what? I didn't, you know, on the gut level, there was some stuff that didn't really work for me, but I can watch this and appreciate the art that went into it.
Well, if you went back to it, you could also just start it at that second half.
Possibly. I think that would be a disservice, and maybe there's stuff that I missed in the first half. Again, so many tiny details that just... And yeah, we could... I think if we were going scene by scene, we could probably talk about this for 3 hours.
Probably.
But we don't have a 3-hour podcast, Tony. I don't have the energy to talk for 3 hours. I'm going to eventually want to eat some lunch today.
I very much doubt that. I think you could talk for 3 hours.
That would be an interesting experiment to do like a recap style review of a movie where we just go scene by scene, similar to what we did with the Game of Thrones.
Yeah, because we managed to make that longer than almost every episode of Game of Thrones this year.
Yes, but I don't think that's what people want, and I don't know that that's what I want to do. I don't want to sit there and take notes on every single scene in the movie, Tony. So I'm not.
It's a different podcast.
A different podcast. So that's all we have to say about Jaws, but we did get some viewer questions regarding the movie. Tony, what did the people out there in Twitterland want us to talk about?
Oh, let's start with Alistair Stewart from the Pseudopod podcast. He's been running that thing for quite a few years now. He's an awesome guy.
We've heard from Alistair before, but it's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a little bit. He's a busy guy.
Yeah, I'm impressed that we've heard from him at all. I'm not calling him out. Like, Alistair, where have you been, man? Why aren't you writing into the podcast every day? It's interesting to me that he still reads our tweets occasionally.
Well, anyway, he asked, Hooper, ? The coolest or the coolest in all caps. Also, how would you cast the remake? And not do a remake is a perfectly good answer.
Well, I do think Hooper is very cool. He's sort of like in the middle between Quint and Brody, right? Where Quint, he knows the ocean like Quint does, but he's still kind of an outsider on the boat. So if you have like this gradient of Brody who knows basically nothing and Hooper who knows a lot, but still doesn't have the insider respect of Quint, which again is one of those themes that this movie plays with a lot of, you know, insiders and, of close-knit communities and trust and things like that. And he has such a great range of ability, but also humanity, where you see that he's not some kind of hardened action hero. He's just a guy, but he's also willing to, you know, to put himself in danger, to step up in spite of his fears. And
to get in that cage with that particular shark in the water.
Right, which it is a great moment because they've gotten, like, that moment comes after everything else. And so having seen all of that, then you move into, and now we're going to go in the water with the shark. If you put that scene earlier in the movie, I think it would not have worked as well. But having it come at the climax where you've already seen what this shark can do, and now you see it rip this cage apart with this guy inside of it, is just, it's brilliant plotting.
Yeah.
As far as casting the remake, man, that's a tough one. I am not like a casting kind of guy. And I'm sitting here looking at the IMDb page with the original cast. I think you could do a remake.
I think you definitely could, but it just would get a lot of the same things said about it, like the Ghostbusters stuff did. Like, if you make one wrong casting choice, you try to make the movie about something that it's not. It's gonna receive so much criticism, like just in general. So you got to be very careful with it.
It's tough too because how much, if you let's say you remake Jaws, how much do you go with the original cast, the original idea? Because who are you going to cast as Quint? Who is going to do Quint that isn't just doing a Quint impression?
Yeah, where you're like half pirate, half fisherman, half like just man on the land type guy.
Yeah, Robert Shaw is already basically doing a Quint impression, and it kind of, I mean, it works, but it's even in this movie, it feels a little bit silly to me, Tony. Maybe it's because I have seen The Master of Disguise, and I know that the impression, the Master of Disguise does the Quint impression in that movie. You must see a shark's eyes.
I think there's
like doll's eyes.
I think there's a guy that could pull it off. He would look a little bit different, but he can kind of go to like that weird dark place and make it seem very serious. And I think that's John Goodman.
John Goodman could be good. I'm seeing, and I'm not exactly sure which part he would play, but our man Zod from the Man of Steel
Michael
movie.
Shannon was who I was thinking of as well.
I think he could pull off Cooper. I think he could pull off Quint. Hooper. Not Cooper. Maybe even Brody. I mean, he's a talented guy.
I think he could do a better Brody than a Hooper. Hooper needs a little bit more energy than that. Like, and Michael Shannon has energy and he has anger and everything, but he doesn't have that kind of like subtle humor and everything.
Brody though has that almost. Roy Snyder plays him with kind of a wide-eyed innocence a little bit. Like, he's legitimately blindsided when the mayor comes up and tells him not to close the beaches. He's like, why would I not? He feels like a fish out of water. Michael Shannon, to me, I'm not saying he couldn't do it because he's a good actor, but in my mind, he feels like someone with a little bit more intensity.
Yeah, that's true. I could see that working for Hooper then.
He would be a different type of Hooper. I think he would be a little bit more of a take charge. That's the secret of this. If you're going to do a remake, you've got to change things up a little bit. You keep them somewhat the same, but put a different spin on them. Speaking of Jaws, or speaking of the Ghostbusters remake, it could, make somebody a woman. I think that the Brody character could definitely be a female, and that would really play well on, again, the outsider type angle that the original is going for. If you keep that theme, if you kind of play on some, maybe you make it a period piece too.
Yeah.
If you've got a female sheriff in a town that doesn't respect, or, that still happens today, in a town that doesn't really respect women and kind of talks down to her, I think that could potentially play into that. Maybe somebody with a little bit, not like a sort of a stunningly good-looking actress, somebody with a little bit more of a...
Like a Hillary Swank type feel.
Possibly, yeah. Or, even... I almost said, this is just in my mind because of Ghostbusters, but like Melissa McCarthy. If you could get her to stop doing her Melissa McCarthy impression that she's been doing this whole time. Okay, I swear to God, I'm sorry about this, but... she's in Gilmore Girls, and she's not doing the Melissa McCarthy thing in Gilmore Girls. She's not doing that weird, like, I'm like angry and swearing all the time. She's like, she plays a sweet, sort of upbeat character. And so I know that she can do other things, and it would be neat to see somebody like her take like a more dramatic role. I don't think she's going to, because I think she's doing what she likes to do. I think she enjoys the comedy, but somebody kind of like that, fighting against the system, I think could be cool.
I think if they were going to do it, they would probably set Hooper to be replaced by a woman and make her like the hot nerd girl. Then they would get someone like Vince Vaughn for Brody.
I could see that too. And that's probably the Hollywood way, but none of these guys, the interesting thing about, I guess Hooper's really the best looking of the bunch, but they're not sort of really handsome Hollywood star looking guys, except for, maybe Roy Schneider. You can see he's kind of older. Like, these all feel like real sort of weathered people. They feel like people you could meet in your local Walmart, not like movie stars. And that's another thing that Steven Spielberg does really well. Even if these guys are, I'm sure pretty good looking in real life, he dresses them and, presents them in such a way that they feel like everyday average people. And you'd have to recapture that as well. That's some of where I would go. And plus, there's plenty of actors that we don't know that could, maybe do great with something like this. Honestly, I'm surprised. I don't know how we haven't had a Jaws remake. Is it just because there have been so many shark movies that have muddied the waters? Literally.
I'd say that that's a pretty good possibility of why. It's also hard to tell with Steven Spielberg and everything, like who owns the rights to Jaws right now, who would have to give that up.
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe he's still holding on to it because there's plenty of stuff that they've remade that was, beloved and they screwed it up. And I think sometimes they've done okay as well, but I don't understand why they're sitting on that. And I don't understand why it's so hard to make a good shark movie. Maybe it's just because people get fixated on the shark and don't put the work into the background. But
yeah, that actually relates to our next question, which is from Chris Becker at Ultron38 on Twitter. It says, is Jaws the best shark movie ever? What death is your favorite in any shark movie? How afraid are you of sharks?
I think Jaws is the best shark movie ever, but I don't think it's the best shark movie possible. I think we could do better. And that's part of what bugs me about not having remade Jaws is that we could make like more great shark movies. This is not subject matter that has been tapped out.
You could make a shark movie about that, about what happened to Quint and why he hates sharks so much.
I think they're working on that. I'm a little bit nervous about that. The Indianapolis wreck, by the way, for those of you who aren't aware of it, that's a real life, true event that happened. And for a time, there was, and I'm going to say a kid because he was a kid when I was in high school, or he was around my age when I was in high school. But I think I assume he has continued to get older, as all of us have. But there was a kid in my town who had the largest collection of information about that particular incident of anybody in the world. He was a nut for the Indianapolis incident, and he had personal interviews and all kinds of stuff like that. If it could be great, but I get nervous because, you have this, it works so well just as a story, right? The way he tells it, and the way Spielberg shoots, just him there. Like, I think a lot of other directors might have tried to go for insert shots, right? And show the people in the water, kind of in a black and white grain or something, and show people being pulled under. But he doesn't do that. He just sticks with the story. And it's so compelling just as words. I'm worried that people would just assume that, oh, well, yeah, it's compelling in Jaws, right? So it must be good, and not know how to bring it about in a compelling way on the screen.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. Robert Shaw, that was probably his best moment in the movie.
It's his most human moment in the movie.
Yeah.
As you see him talking about that last incident where he's afraid to come out of the water, the helicopters are coming picking him up, everybody up, and him thinking, right, like, what if I made it all this way and I don't, like, as the helicopter's coming down, I feel something pull me underwater, after I've survived this long. Like, that moment, just looking into his eyes, you understand that he's not, despite the fact that he's kind of a caricature, that moment makes him more.
I'm trying to think of the best deaths in other shark movies. Like, there's some good ones here. There's some really good ones in Deep Blue Sea. Some very unexpected ones that I don't want to get too spoilery with. I'm trying to think of some of the bad shark movies we've watched, like the three-headed shark jumping out of the water and just crushing that one dude, which is like one of the worst and best at the same time. Like, there's a lot that we've seen.
By the way, The Shallows, I believe, is still in at least some theaters, and I highly recommend that movie. It's not. I've sort of have some reservations about it, but it is one of the few good shark movies. It does a lot of things really well, and it has some really good deaths. And some of those deaths don't even happen on screen. Some of them are just like watching Blake Lively react to somebody as you hear the sounds of them screaming and getting chomped up, off camera. It's really intense stuff.
It just sounds brutal. I saw the trailers for that, and it looked like it was going to be a brutal movie.
It does a lot of things really well. And it, like I said, reminds me that, man, why do we have so few good shark movies? Because I can point to that one, I can point to Jaws, and people sort of like Deep Blue Sea on an ironic level. But
Well, Deep Blue Sea is like a Hollywood budget for a B movie.
It really, yeah, it really is.
What's your favorite shark movie other than this? Like out of all the ones you've seen?
Listen, you know my tastes. It's Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark.
I was wondering about like actual sharks though, like bait or something like that.
Oh, bait. Okay, I forgot about bait. Bait goes in the list of good ones. I'm sorry. I'd forgotten bait somehow, and it slipped out of my mind. Bait is a good shark movie, although it has its sort of cheesy moments. Bait, I love. But no, I mean, I really do love Mega Shark versus Mecha Shark. I know that's not a real shark movie. I know it's not a real shark, but I do have a wonderful warm spot in my heart for that particular bit of schlock.
Al didn't want to hear me giving that movie crap, so he had Brantley on for that episode a long time ago.
Oh, did I?
Yeah.
Wow, yeah. Well, part of it was I think that I just didn't want to put you through that. I knew you didn't want to watch that movie. I was like, I don't need to, like, you don't want to watch it, and I don't want to hear what you're going to say about it. Speaking of Brantley, by the way, I'm going to put a little plug in for our little podcast that we have going on. I just released 2 episodes of our new Too Weird Didn't Watch, where we sort of riff on the IMDb descriptions of really obscure bad movies that even I have never heard of before, and it's a lot of fun. I would like for you to check that out if you have time and you think that might be something interested in.
Definitely go take a look. I'm sure the link will be in the description.
Do we have any more questions about Jaws?
I think that was the last about sharks today.
Okay.
This one kind of includes it. Like David Webb is asking us, like, podcast 201, are you going to need a bigger boat? What do you want to do with the next 99 episodes?
Well, if I figured we'd review some movies and make some questions.
Well, we've actually had a lot of ideas about changing up the format of the podcast to see if we want to do it like a couple times a week, as far as like just having the movie review, just having the chat, just a few other ideas. So we're thinking of changing things up for this current 100 episode season of the podcast. So if you guys have any feedback on what you'd like to see from the podcast, be sure to tweet us at AG Podcast or hit up our Facebook, because we would love to hear it. Yeah,
we're not necessarily making this a democracy, but one of the ideas we have is that we would have, say, 2 or 3 podcasts a week split up. So you would have, let's say, for instance, and again, this is all hypothetical, but we have considered the idea of doing like Movie Mondays and then having, Wednesday and Friday be a different topic. So we would keep the movie review thing, but have it be like its own separate podcast, which might be a little bit more friendly for SEO and things like that.
And also, if you guys didn't want to have to like find out where the review ends because you don't want to hit spoilers, you'd be able to just get to conversation and not have to worry about that.
Yes. By the way, the shark blows up at the end.
Hey, this one is over 30 years old. It's okay. It's kind of weird to think that this movie is 40.
It's
41.
And Spielberg has, been making movies for that whole time.
Yeah. This was like his 3rd or 4th, something like that.
His 2nd, I believe, because the previous one was Duel.
And there was a bunch of shorts that he made as well, so that kind of pads the IMDb page.
I really want us to talk about Duel one day.
I have not seen it, and I would like to. I know it's a TV movie, and it's probably going to have some cringy parts, but...
Oh, no. Duel is amazing. Duel, the ending of Duel is mirrored here. Like, the movements of the shark in the water as it passes through the blood. Like, this is the kind of filmmaker Steven Spielberg, all right? He, at the end of Duel, the spoilers for Duel, okay? Because I'm going to say that because I know a lot of you haven't seen it, so like skip ahead a minute or something. But at the end of Duel, the truck crashes, and it crashes down a ravine through like these big clouds of dust, and the shark's death roll in Jaws mirrors the way that the truck moves. Like the shark moves through its own blood in the same way that the truck moves through those clouds of dust at the end of Duel.
That was some of the best effects of that entire movie, too. Like, whenever you're seeing it kind of like flop around on top of the cage and all that. Like, I was a little bit surprised they were able to get the animatronic to do that so well. Yeah, because
from what I've heard, that's basically the only thing they were able to get it to do. And some of that was like actual sharks attacking. Like they went out to film pieces of that in Australia, and they had like a midget in a small cage so they could make the shark look bigger, and they just let the shark attack the guy and then cut in the animatronic stuff. So some of that's an actual shark attacking an actual dude in an actual cage.
And to just do a scaled cage is pretty funny too. I think we are on to the next question, which is also from Doc Occupant at Doc Occupant on Twitter. David Cameron now has an evil Tory theme. What would Trump's theme be? What about Mrs. Clinton's? Any other figures get themes?
Well, David Cameron brought this on himself. So for those of you who don't know, as I did not know when this question was first axed. Yes, this question was first axed. David Cameron was doing a press conference, and he sort of walked away back into whatever their equivalent of the White House is from the street, and his mic was still on, and he was humming, and somebody took the little 4-bar tune that he's humming and turned it into a like bom 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 bom, and like orchestrated it so that it sounds like this really big evil sort of Darth Vader theme. It's pretty great. However, I mean, for Trump and Hillary to get their own theme, they would have to all hum their own songs to be turned into something.
So I kind of looked up some of the songs that they have for their campaigns, because everybody's got a campaign song. Like, if you remember back to Bill Clinton, he had one from Fleetwood Mac. I'm pretty sure it was The Dance, which is a song about infidelity. Makes a lot of sense for Bill.
So we're going to go through what these candidates actually picked for their theme songs and talk about that instead.
All right. The first one for Donald Trump is Pavarotti's Nessun Dorma.
He's all sophisticated and stuff. Okay, here's the English translation of this song. Nobody shall sleep. Nobody shall sleep. Even you, O princes, in your cold room, watch the stars that tremble with love and with hope. But my secret is hidden within me. My name no one shall know. No, no! On your mouth I will tell it when the light shines, and my kiss will dissolve the silence that makes you mine. No one will know his name, and we, alas, must die. Vanish, O night! Set stars! At dawn, I will win! I will win! I will win! I think that's Donald Trump in a nutshell.
Except for the whole, you will not know the name thing. He's literally got the Trump name on everything.
Well, no, his secret is hidden within him. He's got a lizard person inside of him.
I think he might, have you ever looked at his skin and thought, wow, he looks like a slightly over microwaved Oscar Mayer hot dog?
I have not thought that exact thing, Tony. No, I can't say that I have.
But seriously, the dude looks like he's made out of just a skin of hot dog. It's so weird. I'm just waiting for it to crack under the lights.
This is beautiful. This is this song. It sounds Lovecraftian. It sounds like the stars will set, the night will vanish. And, I mean, it's obvious there's the kiss will dissolve the silence, but it sounds like Lovecraft romance. That's what it sounds like.
One of the other songs listed on here is Twisted Sister's We're Not Gonna Take It.
Okay.
Which, I mean, he is rather defiant in how he speaks and everything, but that's pretty ridiculous. Let's see. Adele's Rolling in the Deep is also on his list.
I don't know that one, although it sounds...
It's very, very dramatic.
Okay. I'm looking at the lyrics to We're Not Going to Take It. Or I'm sorry, We're Not Gonna Take It.
Yeah.
Apparently, the gist of the song is that they're not going to take it.
Yeah, that's pretty much it. And you got to be wearing a lot of makeup and spandex for that. Yes.
Oh, you're so condescending. Your gall is never ending. We don't want nothing. Not a thing from you. Yeah. Okay.
And Hillary just put up a Spotify list of what's the most popular / patriotic thing that will help me in the polls for 18 to 24-year-olds. And it's Katy Perry's Roar and Stronger from Kelly Clarkson and Pharrell Williams' Happy.
What is up with Donald Trump and these weird romances that also have to do with the darkness? I'm reading the Rolling in the Deep. There's a fire starting in my heart, reaching a fever pitch. It's bringing me out the dark. Finally, I can see you crystal clear.
I think he's talking about putting his dick in America. Like,
okay.
I think that's the underlying theme here.
And that will start a fire of some kind?
Friction.
I gotta give props to my man Donald Trump for picking better songs than Hillary. More interesting songs, at least. You're gonna hear me roar by Katy Perry, like, oh wow, even I know that song.
I actually thought there's a pretty legit chance you were gonna know the Pavarotti one out of all the stuff that's listed here.
If I played it, I might recognize it, but I didn't know the name of it off the top of my head.
We'll have to check that one out afterwards.
That's so good, though.
All right, I think that's it for questions this week. But there are some interesting things happening between all of our houses here at the Human Echoes family. And
whatever could you be talking about, Tony?
Is Pokemon Go. And I know everybody's talking about this already because I've been walking recently, and yesterday I got my first 5K egg done, and I'm almost done with my 10K egg, and I saw no less than 30 different people on my walk that were doing Pokemon Go.
Nice. I did not see. I've met one guy. I walked around my block, and there was a guy. I was with AJ, and he says, "Oh, you guys doing Pokemon Go?" And I was like, "Yep." Apparently, there's a lot of stuff downtown. And then when I was on my run, I saw some people parked in a way that made me think that they're just there for the Pokestop. Okay.
I've definitely
I also
seen
interacted with the guy who looked like he might have been a meth head and his little girl. And he's like, "Oh, what's going on?" I was like, "Oh man, check out this game. It's Pokemon Go." And he says, "Oh yeah." And then he asked me if it was on the PlayStation 4 app for Android, which is a weirdly specific thing. I don't know if that's his only reference for games on the phone.
I have no idea. That doesn't even sound like it makes sense. I didn't know there was a PlayStation app for the phone, other than maybe a Plus thing where you get to view your games library and back up stuff.
It was an odd question, but it was the question on his mind, and I have showed him the light as I was walking around the block. My kid did a really cute thing though. He brought his frog with him. You can see pictures of it on my Twitter. He brought his little stuffed frog that he likes to sleep with, and whenever we'd see a Pokemon, he'd throw it on the ground at where the Pokemon was on the phone.
You get any pictures of Pokemon and the frog?
Yeah, I did. Did you not see him on my Twitter?
I haven't been on Twitter this morning.
Okay, well, they were from Sunday, Tony, so it's been
a couple days.
They've been up for a little bit.
I try not to spend too much time on Twitter on Sundays.
They're super cute. He was super cute. So
it's also interesting because if I feel like it's the easiest I've had talking to random strangers that are women before, where you're just at the Pokestop having a conversation. So if you're an awkward 18-year-old kid and you're trying to get some numbers, now would be the time to pick up Pokemon Go.
Yeah, I'm worried that it's gonna go away, Tony. I mean, I know that it will because every fad fades, but the newness is gonna be gone, and then you're just going to be the guy who's still playing Pokemon Go.
Yeah. And for right now, it's one of those things that's just entirely taken over. It's an ice bucket challenge level thing where everybody knows about it. And I know my town's a little more active than yours, but there are just people everywhere playing this. Everybody's walking their dogs. I watched a family of 4, all of them with their smartphones trying to catch these things. I saw a 7-year-old get his Pikachu, and he was so incredibly happy. He was running in circles on the park, and I'm just I love that this game actually has people outside doing a bunch of stuff. And it's just so much fun to be a part of, even if the gameplay is kind of dumb. It really is not robust. You know what I
would like from the gameplay? I would like for when I push things on the screen for the stuff to actually do something.
Yeah.
Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it's just well, here's the animation of you walking, but nothing is available.
Yeah, a lot of that's just due to server lag and everything, though. Because for a while I was seeing circles that showed that there were Pokemon there, but they weren't. I couldn't click on them, and it didn't show what was there. So I got a lot of weird stuff. I probably force closed and reopened this app more than any other app I've ever had.
And when you force close and reopen, at least for me, it does not save your settings.
Yeah, you got to turn off the music again.
Yeah, which I I'm annoyed that the music, like, I would be fine if the music played during the evolution stage, but it just, it's just like oddly quiet if you turn the music off. I assume that there's normally like a ba 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 bam. It'd be cool if it played there. I just don't want to hear the da 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 da
Yeah, like the constant
for the whole
music.
time.
It's like maybe if it had like 30 different tracks, but it's just the one. But I'm wondering, like, this is the first. I've seen a lot of augmented reality games before. Like, this is one that was called like Insight or something like that beforehand. Ingress. And it's a very interesting concept. I've seen some really cool stuff where like there's these spy games where you can like spray paint on walls with your phone, and somebody else who has the app can see what you've done. Like all sorts of ideas like that. And if you go to a really populated area, you'll see them. But it's never quite worked out as well as this. Like where you actually have a game where you have to wander through the world. And I'm really hoping that it keeps getting a little bit better. Like eventually whenever people have like VR goggles or Google Glass type things built into their phone, there's probably going to be some pretty incredible games like this. Like this is like that third step. It's like when the Kindle went kind of mainstream. Like I feel like there's a lot more tech to improve on this.
Yeah, it is nice to see that the technology evolving into something that's in everybody's hands instead of just sort of theoretical. It's nice to see it go viral in that way. So we drove around like idiots in the parking lot of the Toys R Us looking for something that was grayed out, but it looked pretty cool. It's like, oh, that's a cool looking silhouette. I want to find where that is. Could not find it.
There are a bunch of people that are mad that you don't find ghost Pokemon in cemeteries. They kind of made cemeteries so nothing's spawning out there. Which, like, I can see why they wouldn't want a bunch of random kids, like, wandering over graves and everything. But it would be kind of cool, too, if you were respectful.
The one thing that blew my mind is apparently there are some Pokemon that spawn better after dark.
Yeah, I've been on some walks, and that was whenever I ended up seeing, like, a few that I hadn't seen yet before. I got, like, a Ghastly and a couple others.
Okay. We are coming to the end of our time, but I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't at least touch on the topic of Ghostbusters being released and some of the reaction to that and how angry people have been.
Yeah,
people don't hate that movie.
I've seen a few things that just showed like, oh, this was terrible. But like for it to be at a 77% from critics right now on the tomato meter, that's not that bad.
There are some critics who didn't like it, all right? But if your subreddit for Ghostbusters is only posting the most negative quotes you can find and talking about how you hope that it fails, that's like, why? It's just...
Well, you're going to see it this weekend, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
So by the time this goes out...
because of all this discussion. But, and the thing is, I understand it's this weird dynamic where there's plenty of good reason to have watched the trailer and been like, this was not my thing, okay? I was not blown away by the trailers either. They looked kind of lame. But there's so much negativity about what looks like just sort of a bland, not very exciting remake, which we've had so many of. And there's there are the people on the one side who are saying, listen, if you dislike Ghostbusters or if you're hating on the trailer, it's because you're sexist. And that's clearly not true of everybody. But I think that there's like a contingent of people who are at least somewhat sexist, sort of hiding within the people who are mad at being called sexist, being like, yeah, the movie does suck. And it kind of feeds on itself, where you have people who are mad that they legitimately didn't, have an interest in the movie, and then they're being called out, by what they would see as social justice warriors. And you get this weird conflict between people who, it's just a movie.
I would actually be very happy if it turned out to be better than it looked. Like, I seriously would. Like, because I saw that and I was like, this just looks mediocre, and I don't want that for Ghostbusters.
Everything I've heard is that it's not great, but it's better than it looks in the trailers. So that is all the reviews that I've heard. I'm sure if you dug in, you can find plenty of people who hate it. But it seems like just an okay movie. Just sort of like, it doesn't deserve this much anger and hate. I don't understand. Anyway, I just wanted to, I guess, touch on that because it's weird the reaction and how strong it's been. And I don't know why people need to hate something so much.
I think a lot of it is that they're not in control of their own lives. They don't like the way things are going for them, and so it's just kind of this outlet to spew stuff out there. Like, it's like whenever you see most of the haters out there, we've had some pretty negative comments on especially whenever we're trying to push stuff, and like occasionally we'll hit the wrong person, and I go to their feed, and it's like just every single tweet is this giant misspelled angry thing towards everybody, hitting ats at all these different celebrities, just trying to knock them down, like all sorts of things like that. I feel like a lot of that is just bitterness in people's own lives. And then there's also a reactionary thing where people are like, you can't, like, you shouldn't be this bitter about this. And like they take it too far the other direction. It's just all over the place. It's recreational.
I think a lot of it is the fact that people are so bitter is really playing into, if you're not sexist, you know, and you just sort of think, this movie doesn't look that good. Being angry about it on the internet isn't making you look less sexist. Like posting only bad reviews and doing your best to sort of trash the movie at every turn is not making you look like a reasonable person who just thinks the trailers looked kind of mediocre.
Yeah. It's just a huge waste of time too. Like to do more than just like, okay, the movie's coming out, I'm going to go see it. I'll post what I think about it. If you're like literally digging through dozens of reviews just to do that, that's just sad.
But anyway, maybe I've been out of line here. I know that this is a contentious topic, but I don't just the anger. I don't get the anger. We talk, nobody likes remakes. I mean, I'm sure some people like remakes, but on the whole, people understand that they're generally cash grabs. They're generally not as good as the original. They generally don't do, they don't understand what the originals did right. And so a lot of remakes tend not to do well in audiences, although they do tend to make a lot of money sometimes, but it happens all the time, every year. Every
once in a while, you do get a really good remake, like The Fly.
That's true.
Like, because like they're almost entirely different movies as far as tone and everything else. Like, you don't get that Cronenberg like horror stuff in the original, but the original is pretty well liked by a lot of people. And like now, and then you get like the Goldblum version, which is just a really great classic horror movie. So you can have good ones. You just gotta. It's just few and far between. I'm more excited for a new property coming out in, I think, next week, a week from when this is released, and that's Lights Out.
Lights Out looked pretty scary. The first few trailers for Lights Out kind of just made me think, like, okay, this is that's the whole movie is just this gimmick where you turn the lights out and then it's creepy things when the lights are out. But then I saw, I don't know if this is a spoiler, but they had that moment where the mom, like, you realize that she is on the ghost's side. Like, she thinks the ghost is her friend, and like the kids are in the house with her thinking, what are you doing, you crazy woman? That for me was the moment where I was on board. I said, oh, this is legit.
Yeah.
I understand now.
So we're excited to see that. I'm not sure if we're going to be doing a bonus on that. I think I'm going to be at least doing an article on it because I will see it whenever it comes out. But I don't want to commit us to any 0.5 episodes at this moment. You'll be hearing more about us talking about Ghostbusters, about Lights Out. We've been doing a thing where we're trying to do some newer content for the rundowns. So the rundown this week was on Secret Life of Pets.
Yes, so. I just got done posting that out, and I by the way, that's a fun movie.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to get my sister out of the house for. Like, she doesn't get to go to a lot of movies because the baby is just about 9 months. Actually, 9 months tomorrow. So I want to take her and go see that movie. She loves those types of movies.
It may be because I was at it with my kid, but I laughed so hard in that movie. And I've seen some people kind of give it some flack for not being Pixar. It just goes for the jokes. Like, I talked about in my review how that there are moments where it could legitimately pull on your heartstrings, and it's like, nope, we are going silly, we are going fun, and it's very purposeful, I think, and I don't have a problem with that because I think that it's sort of staking its own territory and saying, this is the tone, this is where we're going.
Yeah, and not every movie needs to make adult men cry. It's okay. You can just have some fun with it.
But this movie sure does make adult men and every other age of person and gender laugh. My 2-year-old laugh. I laughed. There was a lot of other parents and people in the theater just having a ball.
And it looks like it didn't do too bad. It got 104 million in its opening weekend.
It did an amazing opening. Also, speaking of things we will be talking about in the vein of Ghostbusters, the Asylum has their Ghost Hunters trailers out, which we talked about this on the Dirt Block. Looks like a legitimately, like somebody just they just sent out to somebody and said, all right, well we need something sort of branded like Ghostbusters, and somebody just took that and been like, all right, well I'm gonna make the best low budget horror movie I can with trapping ghosts in the plot, and that's it. And there are some legitimately scary moments in the trailer. No idea if the movie will be any good, but that actually looks like a lot of fun. Unlike their Ben-Hur ripoff, it looks hilarious. Like it's just bland for the whole trailer is just kind of like, okay, boring, bland science. And then they ask the guy, like the main character, who are you? And he's like, I'm Judah Ben-Hur. It's the funniest thing.
Or their fantasy version of Suicide Squad that they're putting out.
Sinister Squad. That looks terrible as well. That for the Asylum, it's a weird. I know. I always feel weird, Tony, when I'm like, this looks like it's a good movie from the Asylum compared to their other movies. But that is, I legitimately feel that way. Where something like Ghost Hunters, I look at that and I say, that looks like it could be scary. And I look at Sinister Squad and I think, oh boy, you've got Avengers Grimm again, only with. By the way, that was I didn't get through that one. I could not get through that one. Even had the girl from Z Nation that I like. Couldn't get through it.
Anyway.
I hope you guys got through the podcast, though, because that's it for today.
Yeah, we ran a little bit long. Thank you guys for listening. If you want to support the podcast, become a member today. Get access to bonus podcasts, get pins, get postcards, get all sorts of other stuff. The way you do that is by going to humanechoes.com. You click on the Become a Member link. You put it in $2, $5, $10, $20 a month. There's a bunch of different tiers for the stuff that you can do, and that is the number one way to support us. It's worth a lot to us. Like, you guys are what are keeping this whole thing afloat. Thank you so much for being members. Thank you so much for listening to this show. If you can't afford to share it, or if you can't afford to become a member, feel free to share it. Tell your friends about it. That helps us a lot. Even if it's just a retweet every once in a while, anything, like every little bit helps us out. So thank you guys so much. We didn't talk about what movie was coming next because I was a lazy ass who slept too long. And we will talk to you guys next week.
Bye.